Good afternoon, students of BA Part 2nd, Government College, Chaksu. This is Dr. Anshoo Sharma uh, with the poetry of Nissim Ezekiel, the Jewish poet that I had given you the introduction about yesterday. And I had told you that there are two poems that have been prescribed in your course. One is Enterprise, and the other is The Night of the Scorpion. Today I shall be beginning with the Enterprise. I shall give you a brief introduction and then I shall read out the poem to you. And then finally, we'll have an analytic discussion about the poem. So, enterprise, as the name suggests, it seems as if it is some particular business, or maybe there is some venture that the poet is going to embark upon. So basically, it is uh, a journey that the poet is going to describe here. And this is the poem is one of those few Indian poems that have been looked upon from different angles, and a lot of critical appreciation has gone into this poem, and it is one of the best poems by Ezekiel. And the theme of the poem, basically it revolves around a journey, a pilgrimage to be precise. But this is a metaphorical journey, I would say. And there is a group of people who have started on this journey, and they have called it as the Enterprise. And interestingly, when the journey starts, which is usual happening, that when a journey starts, when we embark upon a journey, usually we are very excited, we are very, we look forward to it, we are very enthusiastic about it. But as we move on, usually there are some problems, or there are some up and downs which affect the mood of the people. And here too, in the poem, when the people reach the destination, they kind of start doubting the importance of the journey that they have undertaken, and they kind of realize the futility. And the concluding line is very telling, because the concluding line says, "Home is where we have to gather grace." So the poem is rather didactic. It is kind of delivering a message. No doubt we should set upon journeys, but the most important thing is that we have to decide upon the aim, we have to decide upon the destination. And besides that, even the way we move on, the way we set on that journey, or the way we decide to undertake the journey, like for example the route that we decide, that is also extremely important. As they say, that the means are equally important as the aim. So the poem is rather didactic, it gives you a kind of a message. Then the language that is used in the poem is very simple, as is usual with most of the Indo-Anglian poets. The poem consists of 6 stanzas of 5 lines each. Here on your screens, yesterday I had shared you a picture. It was not very clear, so purposely I have chosen this format so that the print is very clear. But here the division between the paragraphs is not very obvious, but the lines have been marked. You can see that after every 5 lines the number has been mentioned, like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So the poem consists of 6 stanzas, and each stanza, each paragraph has got 5 lines, and there is a rhyme scheme. I'll be reading out the poem, you'll be able to detect the rhyme scheme then. Basically the rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, A. And there is no, as far as the language is concerned, again it is very down to earth, very simple. There is no exaggeration in the language used, except that the different interpretations that can be taken, that can be looked at when we read the poem as a whole. And interestingly, the poet has divided the poem into different stages as per the movement of the journey that has been undertaken. It is clear that on one reading, the poem has a very clear structure. The rhyme scheme is very clear, and also the speaker of the poem is the poet himself. And there are specific instances where the poet uses the first person, and we come to know that the poet is part of a big group, and towards the end, though, there is an inversion. The mood completely changes. There's a paradox towards the end of the journey because of certain realizations, which I shall discuss when I go into the poem in further detail. Then there are different literary devices that have been used throughout the poem. For example, the first line itself is full of sarcasm. The poet claims that the journey is not an ordinary one. Now, how do you know the journey is not an ordinary one? You've not yet, started it, but still, this is like there's a high expectation, and it's like, the pilgrimage that the group has decided upon apparently is supposed to be very grand. And also, there is a mixture of humor and irony which is also visible throughout the poem. And you have certain examples, in different stanzas. We stood it very well, I thought. Now this is like, tongue in cheek kind of a comment, that we undertook the journey, and I think whatever the ups and downs, we stood it quite well. We were able to somehow manage it. That is what the poet is trying to say. Then there is another thing, the other another example, like on how to cross a desert patch, or I tried to pray. These are the different examples of irony that have been, used in the poem. Then in the last line of the first stanza, there is personification. There is personification of the sun. And in the second stanza, there is example of a metaphor where the serpents and goats are used as an example. And the situation is described by using the term serpent and goat, which signifies the kind of people that are being referred to. For example, a serpent would be somebody who's mischievous, up to no good, and goat would be somebody who's very simple, or innocent. Then in the fourth stanza, there is another example of a similar subversion, where the word section has been used, because section is not a part, rather it stands for a group of people. Then also, in the line, he smelt the sea, that is the fourth stanza, I think, the poet uses another instance of this kind of an substitution, where the sea breeze is substituted by the sea itself. So you can see the different literary devices have been made use of, and they have been put to good use, I would say that. And there is towards the end, once again, there is use of personification, because in the last two lines, the poet, it's the in-depth meaning that the poet draws, or the in-depth idea that the poet tries to convey, that is there in the last stanza. And the abstract idea of a trip, now that trip has the capacity to blacken your face. Blacken your face, it can mean two things: that you become dark by traveling so much in the sun, or it can also mean that it was a lost cause. The trip was not very successful, so that way, जिसको हिंदी में कहते हैं कालिक पुत गई चेहरे पे, something like that. So then therefore, we can say that the poem has used the various literary devices in the proper way. Also, there is an example of enjambment, that is between stanzas 4 and 5. I'll explain it to you further when I come across it. But right now, I'm just giving you a brief introduction as to how the poet has, made use of different literary devices quite successfully. That is the main idea that I'm trying to convey to you. So, quite a few different these poetic devices have been used that make the poem more rich, and there is one is the upper meaning, the obvious meaning, that is, when you read the poem you understand, and the other is the inner meaning, what the poet is actually trying to say. That literature is usually full of such, or I would say literature itself is, one is the face value of the words that you read, and the other is the inner meaning that the poet or the writer or the storyteller is trying to convey to us. So, before I start on a formal literary appreciation of the poem, I'll just like to read out the poem to you. You can get the rhyme scheme very clearly while I read the poem. As you can see on your screens, there are 30 lines in all, and there are five, it has been divided into six paragraphs of 5 lines each. So, enterprise. It started as a pilgrimage, exalting minds and making all the burdens light. The second stage explored, but did not test the call. The sun beat down to match our rage. We stood it very well, I thought, observed and put down copious notes on things the peasants sold and bought, the way of serpents and of goats. 3 cities where a sage had taught. But when the differences arose on how to cross a desert patch, we lost a friend whose stylish prose was quite the best of all our batch. A shadow falls on us and grows. Another phase was reached when we were twice attacked and lost our way. A section claimed its liberty to leave the group. I tried to pray. Our leader said he smelt the sea. We noticed nothing as we went. A straggling crowd of little hope, ignoring what the thunder meant, deprived of common needs like soap. Some were broken, some merely bent. When finally we reached the place, we hardly know why we were there. The trip had darkened every face. Our deeds were neither great nor rare. Home is where we have to gather grace. So, this is the poem for you. I have read it out, and I'll just like to point out a few things, because in this particular print, you can see in line number 19, I tried to pray is not PREY, but it is PRAY, pray. Okay. So, one is that, and the other is line number 23, ignoring what the thunder meant. Again, it is not MENT, but the spelling MEANT, meant. So, these two things please notice. Please take a note of this. And once again, you can see the rhyme scheme is very clear. I'll just take up as an example, I'll just take up the first 5 lines, the last words of each line: pilgrimage, all, stage, call, rage. So the first, the third, and the fifth words are rhyming, and the second and the fourth are in a different rhyme. So it would be, what would be the rhyme scheme? The rhyme scheme would be A, B, A, B, A. And that is how it continues throughout the poem. And when I had referred to one of the literary device, that was the enjambment, please notice the fourth and the fifth stanza. The line number 20, I tried to pray, our leader said he smelt the sea. We noticed nothing as we went. A straggling crowd of little hope. This is an example of enjambment where the meaning, is continued on from one line, or you can say the one passage to the other. So this is a literary device. Please, I wanted especially for you people to note it. And you can see that in the last line of the fourth stanza says that the leader of the group, he could smell the sea. And very eagerly we have to move on to the fifth stanza's first line to understand, because in that line the poet, in connection to the previous line, says that we had noticed nothing as we went, that only the leader could smell the sea, but the rest of the company, the rest of the people could not smell anything. They could not detect anything, that whether the sea was nearby or whether it was far off. It was only the leader who seemed to be able to get the smell. Now, he may have been right or he may have been wrong, but the complete sense is conveyed only when we read the last line of the fourth stanza and the first line of the fifth stanza in one go. Then it makes complete sense. Okay, that the leader has an edge over the rest of the people, but because of that unfulfillment of the direction, or the unfulfillment of being able to reach the destination, that builds up a kind of frustration amongst the group of people who have taken up this enterprise or this journey or this pilgrimage. Okay. So I'll end right here. In the next part, in the next video, I shall be doing the complete detailed analysis of the poem. Please read the poem and try to catch the meanings as and where possible. As you can see, the words are not difficult, the language use is not difficult, it is very basic English that has been used, and it should not pose much of a problem. But the inner meaning, that I'll have to talk to you about in a little more detail. So I'll do that in the next video. Till then, please stay safe, take care, bye bye.